Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep, into the Inca Empire, but not just like the typical battles and conquests and stuff. We're looking at how they literally reshaped the world to make their power, stick.
It's fascinating how they
Yeah.
combine the physical and the symbolic.
Right.
They didn't just conquer, they reshaped the world around them to match Inca values. It's like reading their history through blueprints and like piles of rubble.
So we're going way beyond the typical history books, right? Like looking at the bricks and mortar of how they built this empire.
Exactly. We'll be focusing on how the Incas would take existing settlements like the town of Huara, and they turn them into Inca centers. We'll see how they use architecture, public spaces, even their methods of building to create this vision of order.
And the Incas had a pretty bold origin story, right? It wasn't just like, oh, hey, we're in charge now. It was like a whole narrative
Yeah.
about being chosen by the gods to bring order to a chaotic world. What do you make of that?
Well, it wasn't just a story, right? It was central to their ideology. It was the core of how they saw themselves. Like they were on a mission to civilize the Andes. They viewed other groups as uncivilized, constantly at war with each other, lacking proper social structures.
Sounds a little self-serving, from where we're sitting.
From a modern perspective, oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But for the Incas, this justified everything they did. Bringing other groups into the fold was seen as like a corrective measure.
Right.
These societies needed Inca guidance, or maybe a better way to say it, they needed Inca control.
What happened if someone pushed back against that guidance?
Well, the book mentions this ruler named Ilacumbi.
Okay.
He refused to submit. He saw himself as the Incas' equal, like a direct challenge to their right to rule, this divine right to rule.
I can't imagine that ended well for him.
It didn't. The Incas, at least according to their own accounts, they killed him and all of his people. Very clear message,
Yeah.
about who had the ultimate authority.
So right from the start, the message is clear. Incas are divine. Everyone else is below them. But they didn't just talk the talk, did they?
Absolutely not. That hierarchy was reinforced in how they transformed the landscape.
Right.
Archaeological surveys show as the Incas expanded, like in the 14th century, they created this system of administration that was all about turning the environment itself into a tool of management.
Hold on. They're literally reshaping the world around them.
Yeah.
That must take an incredible resources, planning.
It did. And they didn't start by building brand new cities, right?
Yeah.
Early Inca governance focused on transforming the power centers that already existed,
Yeah.
places that were already important to the local people.
Well, that's smart. Take
Wow.
what's already meaningful, make it Inca, like a massive rebranding campaign.
It's a great analogy. The book mentions sites like Pucarapantalisla, Chocapuquio, and Cacahuana. They were all local political centers that got like an Inca makeover. And this happened over a century before, the famous places like Machu Picchu were even built. They understood that to make their power last, they had to transform the places that already held power.
Let's focus in on one of these places, Huara. What made it so important?
Huara is a great example of the Inca approach
Yeah.
to transformation. They didn't just erase everything. They built on what was already there, but in a way that was very deliberate, very much imposed their own vision. Archaeologists talk about the Ollanta phase, or OP, which refers to the period, before the Incas came to dominate the area,
Okay.
around the 1000 to 1300 AD.
Okay.
And what's interesting is that there's evidence of continuity. They didn't erase everything that came before them. They incorporated it.
I'm guessing they added their own unique twist to it.
Absolutely. They compartmentalized the existing settlement into these distinct spaces.
Yeah.
And each space had a very specific role in the new social order. It's like they were saying, we're keeping your traditions, but we're putting them in their place. And I mean that literally.
So they're changing the layout, but they're also changing the whole social structure.
Mm-hmm.
What did this mean for the people living there?
It changed everything, right? How they lived, how they interacted with each other, how they interacted with the Inca state.
Yeah.
One big change was how the Incas used feasting. Now, feasting was already part of how local leaders showed their authority in the Ollanta phase. But the Incas, they took it to a whole new level.
Like a supersized potluck, but with a hidden agenda.
Exactly. They used these feasts to legitimize their rule, to show off their wealth, their generosity. It was like this massive PR campaign, reminding everyone who was in charge, but also, keeping them entertained and fed.
Smart.
And these feasts didn't just happen anywhere. The construction of these plazas and settlements like Wada, it marked a real shift in political practice.
So these plazas become more than just open spaces.
Mm,
They're like stages, right?
mm.
For the Inca state to show off its power.
Precisely. Designed to impress, to convey this sense of order. Places where they could gather the population, reinforce their authority, literally reshape the social landscape.
So let's zoom in on Wada itself.
Yeah.
What did this Inca makeover look like?
Wada's got a long history.
Okay.
With occupation dating back to like 600 BC. The Incas didn't demolish it, but they did give it a thorough makeover. Imagine walking into Wada after the Incas had finished. You would see these three main types of spaces: plazas, storage areas, and houses. And they're all very distinctly Inca.
So they're reshaping all the core parts of life, right? Like where people gather, where they store the resources, where they live.
Mhm.
But they're building all this on top of pre-existing structures, right?
Exactly. And a lot of times they used these specific ritualistic practices,
Okay.
which is where things get really interesting. We'll get into the details of how these spaces were built,
Yeah.
because that's where the story gets really, really captivating.
All right, I'm ready. Tell me how the Incas built this vision, one stone at a time.
Let's start with the plaza at Huata. Remember how we were talking about plazas being, super important for Inca authority? Well, the plaza at Huata was built directly on top of the core of the old pre-Inca settlement, the area where the old elites used to live.
So they're literally building their power
Mm.
on top of the old elite spaces. That's quite a statement, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And they buried these old circular and D-shaped structures, buried them under like a meter of fill.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Not quite. It's more like, we acknowledge your past, but we're building our future on top of it.
Yeah.
And that fill itself tells a story.
What kind of story?
Well, it contained a bunch of broken, decorated pottery from the OP period, especially serving vessels. It's not just random trash. This was deliberate.
Right.
This was an intentional act of burying the past, almost like a burial ritual for the old way of life.
Wow. And to make extra sure that old order was gone,
Mm-hmm.
they lit a controlled fire on top of it all.
Exactly. This fire was probably meant to cleanse the space, purify it for the new Inca order, and only then did they lay the plaza floor on top, concealing that history beneath. So you have this Inca plaza literally built on the foundations of the past, but that past is hidden.
That's fascinating. They're acknowledging it, they're incorporating it, but they're also ultimately superseding it with their own vision. But
Yeah.
this wasn't just, a one-time thing at the plaza.
Oh,
Did they do this in other areas of Wada?
Oh, absolutely. We see the similar process in how they built their storage areas.
Okay. So how did the Incas change, the way that resources were managed in Wada?
So the pre-Inca people, they had the system of storage using what archaeologists call ovoid structures.
Okay.
Basically, they're these stone-lined pits for storing grain and other stuff.
So what do the Incas do with these pre-existing structures? Do they just take them over?
They did something much more symbolic. They burned them, filled them with specific items, and then buried them beneath Inca buildings.
Wait, so they burned and buried perfectly good storage. Why?
It's all about transformation and control, right? They're making a statement. We're not just replacing your system, we're fundamentally changing how things are done here. It wasn't about, practicality, it was about sending a message. This is who's in control now.
So what did they put in these storage tombs, so to speak, before they bury them?
Well, first they would light these intense fires inside, like they were purifying the space, and then they'd fill them with all these carefully chosen things. Decorated pre-Inca storage vessels, tools for processing food, even whole serving vessels. It's like they were creating this time capsule of the old ways.
And then on top of that, like in the upper levels, archaeologists found Inca pottery,
Yes.
including serving vessels, along with animal bones and maize cobs. So it's not just pre-Inca stuff. They're mixing their own artifacts in.
Precisely. And those animal bones weren't just everyday food scraps. They were feasting on dog and deer.
Dog and deer. That's not exactly, your typical menu.
Not at all. Deer was a high-status food for special occasions. And dog, well, that could have been a sacrifice or maybe a way of, marking this as a unique event, adding this layer of ritual to the transformation.
So it's not just building. It's imbuing these spaces with meaning,
Yeah.
making them part of the Inca worldview. So after burying these ovoid structures, what did they do?
They built new Inca-style storage near the plaza,
Hmm.
centrally located, easy to control, and unmistakably Inca in design. So they took a decentralized system and made it centralized, more efficient and symbolic of that power.
And did this pattern of deliberate transformation, did it extend to the houses in Wata?
It did. A great example comes from an area called Balcanpada. It's this residential area just outside the main walled section of Wada.
Okay,
Archaeologists excavated an Inca period house there, and guess what they found beneath the floor?
let me guess. Another hidden treasure.
You got it. The remains of a pre-Inca house and another one of those ovoid structures,
Okay.
like a Russian nesting doll of Inca transformation. Even in people's homes, they were building on top of the past.
So how did they transform this particular house?
They followed the same pattern.
Right.
Fill the old house and storage structure almost to the top with sediment, light a fire on top. Again, suggesting purification. They're consecrating the space, making it part of the Inca world.
And just like the storage structures, were there offerings in this house?
There were burn dog and coup remains near the doorway of the new Inca house.
So they're making offerings maybe to, appease the spirits of the previous inhabitants, like saying, we respect your ancestors, but, we're in charge now.
Yeah, and one detail that really highlights the ritualistic side of this is
Yeah.
they covered the fill with 3 rows of river cobbles.
River cobbles, why? That seems very deliberate.
We don't know for sure, but it could have been symbolic, like representing a boundary between old and new. Whatever the reason, it just reinforces that this wasn't just, random construction. This was a carefully planned performance meant to send a message about the new order.
So it wasn't just about bricks and mortar, right? It was about creating this new reality, a new social order, and that was embedded in everything. But this meticulous transformation of Wada, the plaza, the storage areas, the houses, it wasn't just a one-off, was it?
Nope, not at all. This pattern of deliberate conversion, it happened all over the Cusco region. Wada just gives us this really amazing glimpse into this much larger process of how the Inca Empire was built.
So they're targeting these pre-existing power centers and they're turning them into Inca symbols of authority. It's like they're playing this giant game of Risk, but instead of conquering, they're reshaping in their own image.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. They knew that true power, it doesn't come from just controlling the land. It's about controlling the hearts and minds of the people living on it. And the strategy of place conversion, what we see so clearly in Wada, is a key part of their success.
They built this empire that spanned huge distances and all these different cultures because they knew how to weave their own values into the existing social fabric. It's pretty amazing, their political skills, their architecture, their understanding of how people think.
Precisely. It shows that they weren't just conquerors, they were architects of a new social order. And that order was built quite literally, one stone at a time.
This is incredible. It makes you think about the impact that this must have had on the people who actually lived through this period of change.
Imagine your world being reshaped,
Yeah.
literally from the ground up. Your old homes destroyed, your shrines buried, your whole way of life transformed. It must have been profound.
Yeah.
Both awe-inspiring and terrifying.
Awe-inspiring because of the scale of it all.
Yeah.
But terrifying because it represents the loss of your old way of life.
That's the duality of the Inca Empire, right? It brought order and prosperity, but it also brought subjugation. And that subjugation, it wasn't achieved just through force. It was through this brilliant blend of symbolism and ritual and this architectural mastery.
So zooming out from Wada, what can we say about the Inca strategy for building their empire?
They weren't interested in just conquering land. They wanted to control the very fabric of society, right? And they did that by going after those pre-existing power centers, transforming those places into symbols of Inca authority.
Wada is like this microcosm of that whole process. They weren't just conquerors, they were masters of conversion of places, conversion of practices, and ultimately conversion of identities.
It's a story that still resonates with us today, as we think about the legacies of colonialism and the impact of globalization and just, this struggle to define who we are in a world that's constantly changing.
Wow, that is powerful stuff. This deep dive has already been so insightful. It really makes you think about those hidden stories behind the stones, the echoes of change that still kind of reverberate through time.
And the story of Wata, it doesn't end there.
Oh.
It actually gets even more layered, more complex when we look at how the Incas used rituals to make their rules seem legitimate.
Right, I'm all ears. Tell me about these rituals and how they fit into, the bigger picture.
Well, remember how we talked about feasting being this tool of Inca power?
Hmm.
It wasn't just about, providing free food and drinks.
I'm getting the sense there's more to it than that.
You're right. These feasts were these carefully planned events designed to reinforce the Inca worldview.
Right. And to legitimize their rule.
So it's not just about feeding people, it's about feeding them a narrative.
Yes.
A story about Inca power and Inca benevolence.
Exactly. The feasts were like this performance, a spectacle. Food, but also music and dance and these elaborate rituals.
Like a combination of like a state dinner and a Broadway show all rolled into one.
I love that analogy. And these performances, they were staged in those very plazas that we talked about. So these plazas, they weren't just symbolic spaces, they were functional spaces designed for these grand displays.
So these plazas are like open air theaters, right?
Yes.
Where the Inca state is putting on a show for its subjects. And those subjects, they're not just passively watching.
Right.
They're participating. They're eating the food. They're witnessing the rituals. They're being like drawn into the Inca world. That's exactly right. It wasn't just propaganda. It was an immersive experience. And these feasts weren't just random. They were timed to coincide with specific events in the Inca calendar.
So these feasts are part of this larger system of social control. It's a way of, keeping everyone in sync with the rhythms of the Inca state.
That's a great way to put it.
Yep.
But these feasts weren't just about, celebrating the Inca state. They were also about incorporating local traditions and beliefs.
So it wasn't just a one-way treat. They're blending Inca and local customs.
Yeah. The Incas were smart enough to realize they couldn't just, wipe the slate clean. They needed to work those local beliefs and practices into their own system, even if it was in a very controlled way.
So it's like they're saying, we're in charge, but we respect your traditions. Did that respect extend to, like, local gods, local rituals being, like, incorporated into the Inca feasts?
Absolutely. The Incas were masters of blending these different beliefs and practices to create this tapestry of power that was both, unified and compelling. And those feasts, those elaborate performances that were put on in places like Wata, they were a powerful expression of that tapestry.
It's the culmination of all those transformations we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The destruction, the burying, the building, it all led up to these moments of communal celebration where the Incas could show their power, but also their generosity.
It was like the grand finale, the fireworks display, a spectacle that was meant to leave a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed it.
It's amazing how the Incas built this empire, not just through military force, but through this power of spectacle and ritual and belief.
It really speaks to their understanding of human nature, the need for meaning, the need for connection, for something bigger than ourselves.
Mm.
And they provided that. They provided that through their rituals and their awe-inspiring architecture.
It's such a fascinating story of how this relatively small group of people from the Cusco region could conquer and control such a huge and diverse empire.
And it's a story that continues to fascinate us, centuries later as we try to understand the forces that shape our world, how power is used, how people establish their legitimacy.
This deep dive into the Inca world has been, like, truly mind-blowing. I have so much more appreciation for the complexity and the ingenuity of this ancient civilization.
And there's still so much more to discover. The Incas were master storytellers, they were master builders, and
Yeah.
they were masters of using symbols and beliefs to get what they wanted.
I can't wait to delve even deeper and uncover more of those hidden stories. But for now, we've reached the end of part one of our deep dive.
Okay.
You say we take a short break and then we come back to unearth even more about the Incas.
There's always more to unearth. And what we unearth next is going to add even more intrigue to this story of Inca transformation, maybe even a touch of the macabre. Those rows of river cobbles we found beneath that Incan house in Balcanpata?
Yeah.
They were hiding something really, really remarkable.
You've got my attention. What was buried under there?
A human burial
Wow.
placed right between the cobbles and an OP wall and the corner of that new Incan house. Just centimeters below the floor.
Wow. Talk about building on top of the past.
Yeah.
Literally. Burying someone under the floor of a house. What does that tell us?
Well, it suggests this really close connection between burying people and transforming places. This wasn't just a random burial. It was part of making that house an Inca space. Like they're anchoring this new order
Yeah.
with the very bones of their ancestors.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
Was there anything else buried with them?
Yeah, actually. Weaving tools. This person was probably skilled in textile production,
Yep.
which was, a vital part of Indian culture. So they're burying someone important here. It's
Well,
someone valued right beneath the floor of this house. It's like imbuing the space with the essence of that person.
it adds another layer to these transformations. They're not just erasing, they're absorbing and transforming it into something new. And didn't they also light a fire on top of the burial before they built the house?
They did like a final cleansing,
Right.
making sure those spirits of the past are okay with the changes happening.
So we're seeing this pattern over and over. Destruction, burning, offering, feasting, burying, and then construction. It's almost like a script for Inca transformation.
It really is. And the fact that this pattern appears at so many different sites, it suggests it wasn't just made up as they went along, all right? This was planned. This was a program of conversion.
So they're transforming the physical landscape, but they're also transforming the spiritual landscape too.
Yeah.
They're asserting control over, both the material and the immaterial. But all of this must have taken a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
Who was actually doing all this heavy lifting?
That's a good question. We don't have, direct evidence, but it was most likely local people. Remember those continuities we talked about in the architecture, the material culture? That points to a strong local influence.
So it wasn't just the Incas coming in and, bossing everyone around. These local communities were actually involved in transforming their own spaces.
Yeah. And that's where it gets really, really interesting from a social perspective. Imagine being part of one of these communities that's being absorbed into this massive empire. Your ancestral home is being dismantled, the shrines are being buried, your whole world is being like reshaped.
Yeah.
And you're one of the people making it happen.
It must have been just this wave of different emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Pride in the work, but also a sense of loss.
Right.
Being swept up in something so much bigger than yourself.
That ambivalence is key to understanding the Inca Empire. It wasn't just about brute force. It was about getting people to buy into the new system, to see themselves as part of this grand Inca project.
And all those rituals, those carefully planned acts of destruction and creation, they played a big part in that, didn't they?
Absolutely. It was a way to instill Inca values, to get people to internalize that new hierarchy.
So they're literally building this empire with their own hands, brick by brick. And in doing so, they're building their own new identities as Inca subjects.
That's the power of transforming a place, right? It's not just about changing the physical landscape, it's about changing the social landscape too. It's about creating these new categories of value, of meaning.
And those categories were designed to put the Incas on top.
Exactly. The Incas, they made sure everyone knew their place in the hierarchy. But that hierarchy, it wasn't just established through brute force. It was built on ritual, on symbolism, and on this very strategic transformation of places.
What shows us all of that in such fascinating detail.
Right.
We've seen how they transformed this pre-Inca town, how they reshaped the plazas and the storage areas, even individual homes, to fit this vision of order.
And in doing so, they created this model for building an empire, not just through conquest, but through conversion of places, conversion of practices, and ultimately conversion of identities.
But this transformation, it went beyond just bricks and mortar. It seems like the Incas were also very, very deliberate in how they used ritual to make their rule seem legitimate. Didn't we talk about the importance of feasting earlier?
We did. And those Inca feasts, they were much more than just parties.
I had a feeling there was more to it than just free food and chicha.
You're right. They were carefully orchestrated events designed to reinforce the Inca worldview and to legitimize their rule.
So it wasn't just about feeding people. It was about feeding them this narrative, this story about Inca power and and Inca benevolence.
Exactly. The feasts were a performance, a spectacle. There was food, but there was also music and dance and all these elaborate rituals.
Like a combination of a state dinner and a Broadway show.
I love that analogy. And these performances, they were held in those very plazas that we've been
Right.
talking about. So those plazas, they're not just symbolic, they're functional spaces designed for these grand displays of Inca power.
So those plazas are like open-air theaters
Right.
where the Inca state is putting on a show for all its subjects. And those subjects aren't just, passively watching. They're participating.
Right.
They're eating. They're witnessing those rituals.
Yeah.
They're being drawn into this Inca world.
That's exactly right. It wasn't just propaganda. It was this immersive experience. And those feasts, they weren't random. They were timed to coincide with specific events on the Inca calendar.
So these feasts are part of this larger system, this system of social control, right?
Hmm.
Keeping everyone in sync with the Inca state. But they incorporated local traditions, didn't they?
They did. The Incas were smart enough to realize they couldn't just, erase everything that came before them. They needed to incorporate those local beliefs and practices, even if it was in a very controlled way.
So it's like they're saying we're in charge, but we respect your traditions. And did that respect extend to, local gods and local rituals? Were those included in these Inca feasts?
Absolutely. The Incas were masters at blending different beliefs and practices to create this tapestry of power that was both unified and compelling. And those feasts, those elaborate performances that they put on in places like Huata, they were a really powerful expression of that tapestry.
Those feasts were like the culmination of all those transformations, the destruction and the burning and the burying and the building. It all led up to these moments of communal celebration where the Incas could show off their power and their generosity.
It was like the grand finale, right?
Yeah.
The fireworks display that leaves this lasting impression on everyone who sees it.
It's incredible how the Incas built this empire, not just through military might, but through spectacle and ritual and belief.
It really speaks to their understanding of what it means to be human, the need for meaning, for connection, for something bigger than ourselves. And they provided that. They provided that through their rituals and their incredible architecture.
It's a fascinating story of how this relatively small group of people from the Cusco region were able to conquer and control such a vast and diverse empire. But that control, it wasn't just, physical, was it? It was about controlling how people thought about the world, their very beliefs.
Yeah, you're getting at something really, really important. The Incas, they were very, very deliberate in how they used their cosmology, their understanding of the universe, to make their rule seem legitimate.
Okay, let's get into that a little bit. What were some of the key beliefs that shaped their actions, and how did this play out in these rituals that we've been talking about?
One of the central ideas in Inca cosmology was this concept of duality.
Yeah.
They saw the world as a balance of opposing forces, male and female, sun and moon, upper world and lower world. It was all about maintaining balance and harmony and order.
And where did the Incas fit into all of this?
They saw themselves as mediators between those forces.
Oh, okay.
They were the ones who were responsible for maintaining cosmic order.
That's a pretty big job.
It is, but it's also a very, very powerful claim, right?
Right.
It gave them the authority to reshape the world so that it would align with their vision of cosmic order. And all those rituals, the burning and the burying and the offering, they were a way of putting that vision into action, making it real.
So those rituals weren't just symbolic.
Right.
They had this cosmic significance for the Incas.
Exactly.
And their worldview.
They were a way of rebalancing the forces of the universe,
Yeah.
of bringing everything into alignment with the Inca way.
And the offerings that they made, the food and the chicha and the animal sacrifice, all of that was part of this, right? Ways of appeasing the spirits, making sure the cosmic order was maintained.
Precisely. And those feasts, those grand spectacles, they weren't just celebrations, they were rituals to reinforce the Incas' role as these cosmic mediators. They were blending the practical with the symbolic, the political with the spiritual.
It's almost like this giant cosmic dance, and the Incas are leading the way.
Yeah.
And everyone else By participating in those rituals, they're part of that dance. They're helping to create this new reality.
It wasn't just top-down control, right? It was a collaborative effort
Hmm.
where everyone had a role to play in maintaining that cosmic order.
Like a giant social contract.
Yeah.
Everyone agrees to abide by the Inca rules,
Yeah.
and in exchange they get order and prosperity.
Hmm.
And that contract was reinforced through every part of their lives, from how they built their cities to how they celebrated their festivals.
Exactly. Those rituals weren't just, window dressing. They were the foundation of Inca power. They were the glue that held everything together. And by understanding those rituals, we can really appreciate just how complex and how sophisticated this civilization really was.
We see them not just as conquerors, right, but as these masters of manipulating symbols and belief. They're
Yes.
architects of a whole new reality.
And while that reality might seem, strange to us now, it was a powerful force that shaped the lives of millions of people in the Andean world. Yeah. It's a testament to the power of ritual and the human need to find meaning and order in the universe.
This has been absolutely fascinating. I am so impressed by the Incas' ingenuity, their understanding of how people think.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you. The Incas were an extraordinary civilization, and their story, it continues to inspire us all these centuries later.
It really is inspiring. I'm eager to learn even more about this Inca world and all its mysteries. But for now, we've come to the end of part two of our deep dive. What other surprises does the Inca world hold for us?
There's always something new to learn, and in our final part, we're going to shift our focus from the grand scale of plazas and feasts to something much more intimate, something that shows us a personal, even a poignant side to this story of transformation.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? Like how the Incas completely reshaped the landscape, used those incredible rituals like the feasting to really solidify their grip on power. But you mentioned something more personal, more intimate waiting for us in this final part. What is it?
It's those individual houses in Wada, the ones we talked about earlier. Remember how they were built right on top of those pre-Inca homes? A lot of times incorporating those ovoid storage structures right into the foundations.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
it was like literally building the new on top of the old. It
Right.
felt so symbolic, like burying the past to make way for that Inca future.
It was symbolic, but it was also really, really personal. Imagine like you're someone living in Wada during this time. Your family home, a place full of, generations of memories, is being taken apart and rebuilt as something completely Inca.
It must have been, I mean, incredibly disorienting, even traumatic, to see those familiar spaces of your life, transformed into something so different.
Exactly. And it's in those homes and those choices people made during that process of conversion that we see the real human stories behind this
Yeah.
this grand narrative of empire building.
So what are some of those stories? What did archaeologists find in those houses that gave them a glimpse into the lives of everyday people?
One example that really sticks out is this house in Belcampada. Archaeologists found a really unique offering buried under the floor. It wasn't, pottery or food remains. It was this collection of spindle whorls,
Yeah.
tools for spinning thread.
Spindle whorls, tools for making textiles. So this wasn't just some random offering. It was something connected to the life, maybe even the identity of whoever lived there.
Exactly. Textiles were so important in Indian culture. They weren't just clothing. They were expressions of identity, of status, even spiritual beliefs. And the fact that these spindle whorls were buried under the floor, like right at that threshold between the old world and the new world, it suggests this really powerful act of remembrance, maybe even resistance.
So even in the face of this overwhelming Inca transformation, people were finding ways to hold on to their own traditions, their own identities, even if it was in these subtle ways.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even within empires, people still have agency. They find ways to make meaning in their lives.
That's what makes studying the Inca Empire so fascinating,
Yeah.
right? It's not just about the big structures or the political strategies. It's about people, their beliefs, their struggles, their resilience.
This deep dive has been, I mean, truly eye-opening. We started by exploring how the Incas, they literally reshaped the world
Huh.
to make their power stick.
Hmm.
We saw how they went after those existing power centers, transformed them using these very specific architectural and ritual practices, and they created this new reality that was infused with their values and beliefs.
And through that mastery of ritual and spectacle, they created this system that was both awe-inspiring and, as we've seen, incredibly personal. They understood the power of symbols, of creating this narrative that drew people in and made them feel like they were part of something larger than themselves.
It's really a testament to their ingenuity, their understanding of human psychology. But it also raises all these questions about the impact that this must have had on individuals who lived through this time of such profound change.
What's so fascinating is that even within this system of control, we see these glimpses of resistance,
Mhm.
individuals, communities finding ways to hold on to their own traditions, their own identities. It reminds us that history, it's never a simple story of, winners and losers. It's this complex tapestry of human experience.
I'm glad you said that because I think it's important for our listeners to remember that as they explore the past, to always look for those multiple perspectives, those individual stories that really give us a richer understanding of history.
Absolutely. And the more we learn about the Incas, the more we realize how much we still don't know. Their story continues to captivate us, to challenge our assumptions, to inspire us with their creativity and their resilience.
Well, this deep dive has definitely captivated me. I feel like we've only scratched the surface of
Yeah.
this incredible civilization.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this journey. Your insights have been just incredible.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, this is just at the beginning. There's a whole world of Inca knowledge out there waiting to be discovered. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deeper into the past.
That's great advice for all of us. So until our next deep dive, keep those minds curious and keep exploring.